One Piece is crazy good this week, ladies and gentlemen. So crazy good. All right. So, this is a One Piece chapter right here. I know we've been reading the story together for a long time now, but there are One Piece chapters, like over here, and then there are freaking One Piece chapters, like this one right here. Oda includes a lot of stuff in this one. In case you've been living under a rock for the last week, Oda put out a letter, or a memo, a leaflet as it were, basically, announcing that he is going to go on break after chapter 1053. This is, of course, 1052, so we have one more chapter after this. And by the way, considering how crazy this one is, the next chapter that this one sets up, oh boy, that one's gonna be fantastic. I might have to rent out like a whole dance studio and organize in 1 week a choreographed dance number, you know, like local theater or whatever, to make sure that it's as epic as possible, okay? Fun fact, that is actually how, because I've thought about it over the years, like how I want to end like the last One Piece review, how it would go, and I'd be like, all right, I want to rent out a studio in Los Angeles and get a bunch of actors, professional camera crew, all dressed to the nines, all dressed up like famous One Piece characters and stuff, and there's an awesome rock number, like we have somebody dressed up like Brooke doing like a dance number or something. That's how I would, like, ideally want the last review to go. And then it ends with me using the Orochi voice, of course. But no, like, okay, so a lot of stuff to cover. I think I'm actually going to break this review up into sections with the chapter feature on YouTube, because there's just so many things going on here. But yeah, so we basically only have 2 chapters of Wano left, this chapter included, right? And then after that, we're going on a month break, and then we're going to come back, I think in July, late July, like July 25th or like early August is chapter 1054, and that's kicking off the last portion of the One Piece story. So we got a lot of stuff on the horizon here, but first let's tackle this. This will be One Piece chapter 1052 review, titled A New Morning. It's a glorious new day as the dawn rises. Oh, I get it, dawn, because the sun rising. Very relevant in the One Piece world. If you know, you know. Okay, so kicking this off, though, with the Germa cover story. Okay, so it's not quite the marvelous misadventures of Caesar Clown, but it's close enough, ladies and gentlemen. So as the Germa are all walking away from this massive explosion, like action movie heroes from the early 90s, they just don't care about the explosion. They're just walking out of Whole Cake Chateau. Super cool. Reiju kind of senses somebody behind one of the pillars, and she kind of is just like walking away, and she's like, and she just looks over, and then we see Caesar Clown hiding behind a wall, and the caption is, "A certain scientist that simply failed to get away." Oh, Caesar, you and your silly antics. Can we get a funny little theme song for Caesar? Like, he's Caesar Clown and he always fails. You know, and he's like, poor Caesar. Actually, screw Caesar, all the horrible things he did on Punk Hazard. But it's interesting that he's here right now, okay? First and foremost, he's back to wearing his normal outfit, which is pretty much just made out of gas, because he has the gas Logia. So he changed his outfit, so now it resembles a lot more than it did on Punk Hazard, with like that flowing lab coat that has gas written on it. But he still has his spiked hair when he was Gangster Gastino, so he hasn't had time to like remodel his hair or whatever. So I'm actually kind of curious, though, like, how exactly did he get captured again? How did he end up back here? This is a Whole Cake Chateau. This is the center of Big Mom's territory. Last time we saw him, he was outside of the chateau. Like, they all managed to escape. They all got off of the chateau as it was falling down. They got a few miles outside of Sweet City, and Caesar was there, and he's like, oh, come on, I did everything you guys told me to do. Can I just have my heart back and leave? And so Beiji's like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. And he tosses Caesar his heart. He's like, oh, thank you. Now screw all of you. I am never seeing any of you again. And he just, you know, pops his heart back in and he flies off into the sunset. Actually, did we see him put his heart back in? Did Beiji not even give him back his heart? Oh my god, that would be such a Beiji move. You know, it's just like, yeah, whatever. I'm pretty sure he did, because the heart was taken out by Law, and then Sanji had it when they were going to Totland, and then Caesar asked Sanji to give it to him then, and then Sanji's like, screw you, and just gave it over to Vito as a member of the Fire Tank Pirates. That's how the Fire Tank crew got their hands on it. So I don't think there was another heart around, unless Beiji made a fake one, but I don't even know how you would do that. So I'm thinking Caesar did get his actual heart back. I think we actually did see him put it back in himself, so that's the case. But how did he, like, okay, so he can fly. He has the power of the gas fruit, but also keep in mind, Big Mom's crew is huge. I mean, right, like just her children alone, there's like 85 of them plus the crew itself, and they were all mobilizing to attack the Germa, to capture the Straw Hats, to capture the Fire Tank crew. They were moving all over the place, okay? So, you know, it's entirely possible that Caesar went into his hot air balloon form to try to just fly away from Totland, but it was like, all right, I'm gonna get out of here, and it's like a bunch of Big Mom's ships start firing at him. He's like, oh crap, I'm gonna go this way. Oh crap, I'm gonna go this way. And it's like he just could not get off of the island, and he's like, okay, I need to rethink this. This is dangerous, because also, it's not a situation of just getting off of Whole Cake Island. Big Mom's entire territory, you know, encapsulates like 30-something islands that for kilometers around in that section of the New World, okay? So, getting off of Whole Cake Island, that's like step one. There's like so much more you have to do. Just the Straw Hats sailing from Whole Cake Island to outside of her territory can take like over a day, I think. So, you know, it's entirely feasible he just could not get out of the airspace of Whole Cake Island, I guess. He was being shot at, or a bunch of, you know, Big Mom's kids would have noticed him, and he's like, oh crap, okay, I need to lay low. I'm just gonna go back to the castle where everything's destroyed and just hide there for a while. Certainly having the gas fruit makes it possible for him to hide pretty much anywhere, and to sneak in pretty much anywhere. He can literally sneak in through like a small little crack on the wall if he needed to, right? So now the Germa are there, and Caesar has this look on his face like, I don't know what to do. Do I ask for help? I mean, they honestly might be the best chance of me getting out of here, but they're the Germa, you know? I haven't been bossed around by them yet, but hey, you know, that's pretty much what's happened with the last 3 groups he's involved himself with. Actually 4, if you count Kaido's group bossed him around, Big Mom's group bossed him around, the Straw Hats bossed him around, and the Fire Tank Pirates bossed him around. So why not the Germa too? However, it would be interesting if Caesar joined up with the Germa, they all got off of Whole Cake Island, and then Caesar meets Judge, who, you know, used to be part of Mads alongside Queen, and also I was thinking, what if Queen, after, you know, the Beast Pirates have fell, he might be like, all right, I'm gonna find a new line of work, and maybe Queen goes back to meet up with Judge. So it's Judge, Queen, and Caesar starting up a new Mads organization to contend with the SSG that Vegapunk headed up. Or maybe they go back to try to all work for Vegapunk. That would actually be really funny if Caesar had to go crawling back to his old boss. But, yeah, so I did not expect Caesar to show back up here, certainly. I don't know what's going to happen with him next. But yeah, that's the cover series. It's going into very new and interesting places. By the way, we still don't know who those people were at Cacao Island that landed. Okay, the Germa just showed up out of nowhere and destroyed, like, the whole laboratory and freed Niji and Yonji. But those people at Cacao Island, that's something different. So, you know, we're just getting started with the Germa cover story, okay? We don't know where we're going to go from this. Okay, so, yeah, I'm going to break this up into different chapters. So the first chapter is just going to be Mariejois, okay? So we cut over to Mariejois, we see how the Gorosei are going to react to this, okay? So we see Pangaea Castle, and the one that's talking the most here is Judge Dreadlocks, okay, as a member of the Gorosei. They all have very funny names. So there's Judge Dreadlocks there, and he's like, it seems that the sun god Nika has re-emerged. Also, 2 emperors have fallen. Yeah, we're not going to be able to cover this up. I mean, we're the world government, and we pretty much control the entire world through propaganda and influence and stuff, but, 2 of the strongest pirates in the entire world ended up getting defeated. It doesn't matter where it happened, you know, at Wano, which is like a closed border. It doesn't matter. We can't cover this up, okay? The people of the world are gonna find out about 2 emperors falling. I don't even know how to begin to deal with this. You know, he's talking about that there. So then we cut back to outside Wano, where the Gorosei are talking to the Cypherpole Zero agent, the lanky dude that managed to get away. His mask kind of looks like a flower. Anyway, he's talking to the Gorosei, and, you know, he's just like, oh yeah, by the way, the elephant also disappeared. He's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. I mean, it's really foggy around here, but I don't see a giant elephant, so I'm going to assume the giant elephant left, okay? So the Gorosei learn about Momonosuke's decision to close off Wano, to not open the borders. The idea was, I guess the world government, the Gorosei, were debunking on that prophecy coming into realization, because they knew that, like, okay, you know, the prophecy of Joy Boy returning and the borders of Wano opening again. So they were like, okay, let's use that to our advantage, all right? So let's have this massive fleet outside of Wano, so if Kaido is defeated, then the prophecy will come to fruition, and the next person will open up the borders, and then we could just mass invasion of the entire nation, okay? And we'll finally be able to claim Wano as part of the world government, okay? If force is necessary or whatever. But since Momonosuke decided, hey, yeah, there's a giant fleet of government ships outside this island, probably shouldn't open the borders quite yet. The government, you know, the Gorosei are like, seems like there's someone with a lot of guile that is the new shogun or whatever. Yeah, or it could just be the fact that you parked an entire fleet outside the island. Why do you think they would open the island when there's a giant fleet right at their front door? It'd be like, knock, knock. It'd be like, no. Shut the door in the government's face. And they're just like, all right, well, I guess that it's an impenetrable fortress now. They even mention, like, trying to take it now would be nigh impossible. I don't really know about that. I know you're the Gorosei and you have all the authority and everything, but why couldn't you at least attempt it? Like, it's a good thing they're not. I'm just saying, like, this is a moment when, okay, Kaido and Big Mom are both taken out. On top of that, the people that did manage to defeat them are probably very injured, and we know they are. The case of the Straw Hats are pretty much, you know, out of commission. You know, Zoro and Luffy are both unconscious at the moment. A lot of the samurai are dead. We'll get to that later in the chapter. But the point is, there's a lot of, like, you know, damage on both sides. You know, the Samurai Alliance did end up winning, but there's still a lot of injuries on their side as well. So I'm just saying, like, if the government were to try to do a mass invasion of the island, you know, sail up the waterfall, and there's a risk in that as well. But hey, Marco can't knock down all of the government ships. You know, the government ship goes up the waterfall, Marco's there, and he's like, bam! And he's like, all right. He's like, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like a mini game where Marco's like, help Marco knock down all the government ships. Boom, boom, boom. I don't think he could get all of them, is my point. You know, and he's kind of injured and wounded himself. I don't know if he has the ability to even do that, like, for a lengthy period of time. So, I don't know. I feel like the government is being very prudent. They're like looking ahead there. That's the whole point of the Gorosei, not to make rash decisions, to kind of plan all this stuff out. And also, it's important to mention they do say that, you know, the sun god has reemerged, okay? So even though they might assume that Luffy might be injured or something, they don't want to take any chances, okay? They don't want to take any chances in trying to invade Wano, and then Luffy turns into a giant sun god and, like, smashes their entire fleet. They even say, you know, we don't have enough numbers to make that happen right now, so we are going to tactically retreat, okay? And, like, wait to see how this is going to go. However, before that happens, though, one of the Gorosei members, I believe it's Sanji's uncle, the younger looking dude with the beard, he does mention to the Cypher Pole agent, he's like, all right, so we can't take Wano, whatever. We could still get our hands on Nico Robin, though, right? And, that poor Cypher Pole Zero agent, he's back on the ship, and he's just like, yeah. You ever have, like, a conversation with somebody and you bring something up to them and they respond in a positive way, but it's like it makes you question, like, It's like, hey, yeah, we're still going to the movies tonight, right? Yeah. It's just like, is something going on? It's like, no. Yeah, and it's just like, okay, it's just like, it's kind of like that, where it's like, we can, in fact, we've already captured her, I'll deliver her to Mariejois, like, immediately. Shit. So the Gorosei are pretty much like, darn, we can't take over all of Wano. I was looking forward to that today. We could still get Robin, right? Yeah. Okay, then everything's good. Now, before that conversation can continue, though, the Denden Mushi on the government ship that the CP0 agent is using begins to, like, buzz and, like, you know, clip, and it's like, what's going on here? And it's like, the signal is being hijacked by someone, okay? So somebody probably using a black Denden Mushi that can, like, and well, no, I guess it would be, wait a second. hold on, the black Dendenmushis, like, intercept other signals. I don't think they make signals themselves. No, because there was actually a joke about that once where somebody, like a Kizuru, was trying to speak into the black Dendenmushi and it didn't work. So this would be maybe a Dendenmushi that would be able to hijack another signal, which, have we even seen one that can do that? Hold on, I have to go through my Dendenmushi index really quick, okay? So we have the baby Dendenmushis that are like small range, and then the regular that can do like the larger range. Then the horn Dendenmushi, like, you know, cut out the signal. They're basically like a jammer, okay? So that's not this. And then the black Dendenmushi overhears other conversations, and then the white Dendenmushi, which is like the rarest variety, is connected to a normal Dendenmushi to prevent the overhearing or the eavesdropping of a signal, okay? But I don't know if we've ever encountered a Dendenmushi that's able to just straight up like hijack a signal and then just communicate through that Dendenmushi instead. This might be actually a new breed. You know, if I'm just not thinking of one right now. Anyway, the signal gets hijacked, and then the person on the other end, we don't know who it is yet, is like, come in, Cypher Pole 0, stay where you are, I'm on my way. Okay, well, I'm sure that's not going to be relevant in any way, shape, or form at the end of this chapter. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So, you know, this Cypher Pole 0 agent, the last guy that survived, it's like, I'm sure he's happy he survived, but now he's got to be the one to deal with all the fallout here. You know what I mean? He's got to be the one that's like, ah, crap. Maha, Fred, I wish you guys were here right now. We could take the fall together, but now it's all on my shoulders. Ah, crap. All right, so he's got to figure out a way to capture Nico Robin now, and that person on the other end of the Dendenmushi might actually be the answer that he was waiting for, so we'll see where that goes. So now we're going to cut over to the ruins of Onigashima, so we see the entire island now resting outside of the flower capital, like right in the middle of the wasteland, basically, and just the narrator comes on and mentions, you know, after 20 years of oppression by Kaido and Orochi, all of Wano is in a sense of like being in a festival mood, like even beyond the fire festival, right? So they're all happy. We see in the distance the flower capital is all lit up and everyone's happy and partying the night away. But now we cut to the ruins of inside of the castle. So at this point, the Straw Hats and everybody, all the allies, have basically vacated the castle. They've all left the castle. They went into the flower capital, into the palace with Momo. We're going to see them later in the chapter. So it's now just the ruins. So I imagine a bunch of the casualties of the Beast Pirates are laying around like, someone help me. And we cut now into the castle interior where we see Drake and Hawkins, okay? So Drake is on the ground. Remember, he was defeated by Fred, the leader of the CP0, the one with the bowler hat. He actually got stabbed through the neck, but he could still talk. Yeah, he's an ancient zone, so I can chalk that up to like having endurance and like a more, you know, extended healing factor kind of situation, right? So he's on the ground. He can't really move, though. His sword is next to him. And then Hawkins walks by. And, you know, if Drake looks pretty rough, Hawkins even looks worse, okay? He just had a battle with Killer, remember? He did like the buzzsaw blades point blank by Killer. So, yeah, he's not looking too hot right now. Hawkins is like hobbling into the room and he's like, so, Drake, tell me, were you really a Marine this entire time? I know I'm a fortune teller or anything, but it really doesn't work like that. And Drake is like, you idiot. Do you think I would tell you? Are they gonna break out and do a musical number for some reason? I don't know why. It's just like, all those years I used my cards, I trusted my fate to the heart of those cards. And then Drake's on the ground, but now we are laying on the ground, defeated by the Straw Hats, and we were... knocked around. This is why I don't do musicals, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, no. So, yeah, Hawkins kind of slumps up against one of the pillars, and he's just like, you know, I basically could foresee this in the cards, you know, when Kaido first emerged, when he fell out of the sky, you know, Kid and Killer, they never stopped fighting against him. But when it came to me, I read my tarot, and it said that the chances of survival are greatest if I follow Kaido. So we already kind of understood that. The reason why Hawkins would just, up and join Kaido's crew is because the cards told him to. And in a Vivre card, it was even revealed, or in an SBS, something involving Hawkins. I think it was a Vivre card. It was mentioned that, Hawkins takes the readings on his tarot cards very, very seriously. So if his cards tell him, hey, you have a chance of dying if you go against Kaido, but if you go with him and you work with him and you join his crew, your chance of survival shoots up pretty good. And so Hawkins did that, right? And he does say something interesting, though. Well, Drake says, he's like, it looks like those precious cards of yours, promised that you'd be safe if you got stuck with Kaido, but then look what happened there. And, Hawkins says, I submitted to him because of the cards. But even if I did foresee his victory, do you really think I would have gone crawling back to him? So there's a little bit of a line here that implies that, yes, Hawkins might take his cards, worth, very highly, he's like, whatever the cards say, but it isn't like what I originally assumed with Hawkins, where no matter what the card says, he follows dutifully, okay? He does have his own sense of pride, his own sense of ego, his own sense of morals and everything like that, and so it's like he still wants to be the captain of his own crew. At least that's what I'm getting from this. He wanted to be the captain of his own crew, the Hawkins Pirates. He wanted to be the one, to find the One Piece. That's what a lot of the supernovas were looking for. And the idea that he had to submit to Kaido, he wasn't happy about that arrangement, but, that was what the cards told him to do. It's like, if you go against him, you're probably going to die. But if you go with him, you might be safe. And so Hawkins is like, okay. I also feel like Hawkins' fortune telling cannot see super far into the future, because if that was the case, it would have told him that, okay, join up with Kaido, but in a couple of months there's going to be this war, and so it's not that accurate. Remember when Hawkins first met Luffy and Zoro at the beginning of Wano, and he said, oh, there's a very small amount of chances that you're going to be alive by the end of the month. So maybe that's Hawkins' limit for his fortune telling. He can only predict something that'll happen within the next month or so. So when Kaido fell out of the sky and he submitted to him, it wasn't like, Hawkins could read 6 months into the future or whatever, however long this was, and be like, Kaido will eventually be defeated by Luffy, who unlocks the power of the 5th gear. It's nothing like that. And his cards are more percentages rather than telling him exactly what will happen. It's more like Hawkins asks a question to his tarot, and they give him 27% chance that you'll open a bakery by the end of this story. And it's like, I don't like those odds. That's how it works, right? But he still has a sense of pride. He still is like, I don't want to work for Kaido, and even if my cards predicted that he would win this battle, I don't want to go crawling back to him, man. I want to be my own pirate. I want to be my own captain, But now he's severely wounded, right? So now Drake is on the ground, and he's like, so wait a second, remember back when you predicted the future for that certain man that only has a 1% chance of surviving until the end of the day, or the next day? And then Hawkins is like, yeah, that was me. Ugh. And then we just see Hawkins lean back against the pillar and to just slump up against it and go completely limp, and he just falls to the ground. It looks like he loses consciousness. There's a lot of blood, and he just hits the ground. Now, here's the thing. If this was an arc ago, I would say that Hawkins is definitely still alive. But from what we're going to see here in a little bit, I don't think Oda is pulling any punches on this shit anymore, so Hawkins might be dead right now, okay? So I'm sorry if anybody out there really liked Hawkins, if that was your favorite member of the worst generation or something, because there's a pretty solid chance he's dead. In fact, there's a 99% chance he's dead right now. I can actually give you the perfect percentage. Can't usually do that, but there's a 1% chance he's gonna survive and he's just unconscious, but 99% chance he's dead. I'm thinking he's dead, and we'll see why in a moment, okay? And so that's the end of their little moment there. The next section is not that big, but we cut through various scenes all over Wano, okay? So first we see, the flower capital itself. Everybody is cheering and just hey, don't take down the festival decorations yet. Momonosuke, after, he becomes the shogun and everything, there's going to be another festival pretty soon, and so don't take down the decorations, and so that's good. They're going to party all night, every day, all week, every month. They're gonna go crazy with this, right? 20 years of oppression, 20 years of partying. Okay. Now we cut over into the school in the Flower Capital, where we see a new teacher there. So this is like going back to the scenes that we saw at the beginning of the arc, where Sarah Hebby, who we later found out was a Smile that was working for Black Maria, she was the school teacher, and of course she was teaching all the kids about like how the Red Scabbards are evil, and how Kozuki Oden was evil, and how Orochi is, you know, your god and everything like that. So now we have a new teacher here. He's not quite as sexy as Sarah Hebby, but he's got like slicked back hair, and he's got glasses, and he has got a fan. He's got like a little, you know, fan here, whatever. Okay, you got a fan. And he's just like, all right, welcome back to school, kids. I know we had a few days off there, but, you know, it was because of reasons. Anyway, turns out we're going to have to restart every single thing you learned from scratch. And as you can imagine, a bunch of like elementary school students, they're like, oh, come on! Like, imagine that. Imagine you're in school for years and years learning this whole curriculum about the history of the world, and then a new teacher just walks in one day and is like, all right, so all that work you did, all that stuff you learned over the last few years, we're starting over. Be like, oh, come on! And so the teacher is just like, all right, let's start with one of the greats. Kozuki Oden 101. All right. So Oden was born, and he just goes into the life of Oden. You know, he killed a grizzly bear with his bare hands at age 4. Well, okay, not with his bare hands, with a giant boulder that he wielded with his bare hands. Okay, this is the stuff I wish they would have taught me in elementary school, honestly. It's like, oh my god, history class? Okay, I really liked history class, okay. But if it's like math class, okay, it's like, oh god, I hate math class. Okay, so this guy, you know, like, who's a famous mathematician? I don't know. I don't know famous mathematicians. I know famous historians and geographers and stuff. I don't know, Isaac Newton. Okay, let's just use Isaac Newton. I think he's more physicist, but you need math for physics. Okay, whatever. So, it's like math class. You walk in, or calculus or whatever, and the teacher's just like, all right, time for calculus. Oh, God. So Isaac Newton killed a bear with his bare hands when he was 3 years old. I'm like, I think I might be into physics all of a sudden. You know, this is a pretty interesting thing. All right, now, kids, let me teach you about the harem wars. Well, okay, maybe we'll wait a while to teach you about the harem wars. Okay, let me teach you about a moment that Oden redirected an entire river and flooded the capital. It's like, okay, yeah, why didn't we hear about this guy before? This is pretty fascinating, right? Not to go too real with it, but during this scene, I actually did, it actually did speak to me a little bit in terms of like the current situation of the world, because it sort of gave me a vibe of like how it is in like North Korea, where obviously there's a lot of propaganda there, and like defectors from North Korea, when they go to the South, will like learn like the real history about how this worked and everything like that, and they were like fed lies in North Korea, and a lot of them are actually like, you know, they're like in disbelief, because it's like something they learned their entire life, and it's like, oh, okay, after they defect, they learn about what really happens. Okay, so that's going a little bit more real with it, but that's essentially what's happening here. The point is the kids are being taught the true education of Wano and not like all these lies that Orochi was feeding them, okay? So now we cut over to some people that are just talking about Komurasaki and Denjiro. They're like, who would have thought that the beauty Komurasaki was actually Kozuki Oden's daughter? And who would have thought that Kyoshiro, the boss of the Yakuza, was actually Denjiro, protecting her this whole time? Actually, did you hear that Kawamatsu protected Hiyori as well? Oh my god, that's so awesome. I hope to meet them someday. So now, the Scabbards, who were like villains up until this point in most of Wano, at least with the regular citizens and everything, are now becoming the heroes that they truly are. Okay, so that's great. We see Ebisu Town, we see a bunch of the citizens there, like that old grandma and some kids, and they're all drinking like the fresh, clean water from the well, and it's just like, oh my god, this is great. Can I have another cup of water? Absolutely, kid. Oh my god. Can I have another cup of water? Absolutely. Rounds on the house. You know, like, awesome. Oh, that's great. We see the Paradise Farm, which is over by Bakura Town. That's like inside of the mountain where Odin Castle was. That's the place where we first meet Speed and everybody, okay? So we see the Paradise Farm, and they're all talking about Kaido's defeat. Like, hey, Bill, did you hear who took down Kaido? Who's that? I don't know, but he's some warrior named Joy Boy or something. But I hear he already left the country. centuries, so I don't think we'll be able to thank him properly. It's like, oh man, that sucks. I wish he was still here. So this is the rumor that I guess that might have been spread, that the Straw Hats already left. That might be a smart thing, so they're not like harboring, fugitives or whatever. So it probably is smart for like the regular citizens of Wano to just think that like their saviors are no longer in the nation to leave. I mean, I know they would want to thank them and everything. Kind of a similar scene with the end of Skypiea, when all the Skypeans want to thank the Straw Hats and they think they're chasing them and they run away. Kind of something like that. But it's like probably a good thing that not every single member of, like not every citizen of Wano knows that the Straw Hats are in the palace right now, okay? Now we cut over to Ringo, the Eternal Graveyard, where we have a moment with Kinemon and Kawamatsu and Marco as well. So I'm not really sure. Oh, by the way, previous scene back in the Paradise Farm really quick, one of the guys also says, like, man, the legend of this Joy Boy rivals that of the Sword God himself. And then we transition to Ryuma's grave. I'm thinking this is his temple. I think it is. Because they're talking about building another shrine. It's like, we're going to build another shrine in Ringo. And it's like, yeah, Kinemon's like, we're going to build another shrine in a very similar way to Ryuma's shrine on top of this hill that'll overlook the flower capital. And it's in that new shrine that we're going to lay to rest Odin, as well as Yasuie. And then also Ashura Doji and Izo. So Ashura and Izo are both dead. That's what I mean, like, Oda is really not pulling any punches here. Well, he kind of is. Oda has gone on record before saying, like, because people have asked this before. It's a story that's gone on for 20 plus years. People have asked him, how come there's not that many, like, deaths in the present of your story? There's a lot of people that die in flashbacks, but nobody really dies in the present. And Oda usually says something like, it's like, well, don't kill off characters unless you have a meaning to. You don't want to kill somebody off just to bring them back. And also, like, death is like the end, so it's final. So it's like their dreams are over, their journey is over, and I guess Oda's like, I might want to do something with them later or whatever. And I think also with Pell, because Pell is the big one, and just like, why didn't you kill Pell? And it's like there's a lot of debates around that, like the exact reason. One of the reasons that I like about it that Oda said is just I didn't want to end Alabasta on a sad note, with Pell dying. I don't think it would have been a sad note. I think it would have been Pell sacrificing his life so everybody could survive. And so I think this might have been Oda's chance to, like, rectify that, maybe to go a different angle with it. And it's like, hey, it's not in the same way where there was a giant explosion equivalent to a nuke that would have wiped out the entire island or the entire city of Alubarna, but Ashura Doji belly flopped on top of an Odin explosive, so yeah, close enough. So Ashura just straight up died. And I went back and I read the chapter where Ashura died. And I think it was chapter 1008, if you want to go check it out. And, like I said when I first reviewed it, it was a chapter named after Ashura. And Ashura had a big moment in the chapter. But it wasn't as focused on him as I thought it would be, considering that was it. That was the last scene. I think what tactic Oda is going for here is like, okay, I'm not going to show their deaths in grisly detail. I'm not going to show, like, 3 pages of Ashura on the ground, burning apart, dying, or Izo on the ground, bleeding out. It's like, oh, Kiku, avenge me, and it's like this very dramatic thing. I'm just going to be like, Ashura Doji, big explosion, he's dead. Izo fights against Maha, they both die. And it's kind of going to be... it's kind of going to be more off-screen, if anything. Okay, so that's the way he's going about it there. But like I said, if this is how we're setting the stage for the final saga of the story, with Izo dead and Ashura dead, Hawkins probably dead, like, from this point onward, I think we're going to be seeing, because this is the climax of the journey. After this is over, the story is over. So Oda might be like, all right, I got to start killing off more of these characters. I don't think he's going to be doing that, but it's like, okay, now stakes are getting way higher now. They just had a battle with a bunch of, Yonko and stuff, and, so, we might have some deaths here, you know what I mean? It's really sad because Marco is there, and we actually see a scene with, like, Ashura's sword and Izo's guns inside of the shrine, and then Marco kind of flies down and sits next to them, and he's basically just like, well, I lost more of my friends, so more people leaving me in this world. I'm like, oh my god, that's sad, And Marco says it, he's not crying or anything, he just kind of lands next to them nonchalantly and is just like, yeah, another one of my friends is dead. Yep. you know? And it's just so powerful coming from him because Whitebeard died, Ace died, now Izo's dead. He probably lost some other friends during the Payback War. I don't think all of the commanders made it out of the Payback War alive. Jozu's probably still alive, Vista's probably still alive, but like Blamenko, you know, like Narmer, maybe like Blenheim, you know, Curiel, King Du, they might be dead for all we know, right? I hope Curiel is still alive though, because he's like the Vietnam War vet of the One Piece world. I hope he's like Rambo of the One Piece world. I hope he's still alive, but like I'm sure some other people probably died during the Payback War. So Marco has seen so much death in his time, but he's just sitting there and he's just like, yeah. He's kind of used to it at this point, which makes it even more sad. Onimaru is there. Onimaru the fox arrives, and Kawamatsu's like, Kappa Kappa! Oh, you're alive too! Oh, good boy! You know, he's like petting him. He's like, maybe we'll be laid to rest here too, next to Odin. By the way, they mention Odin's body, like, do they have that? Because the last time we saw it, it was in a giant vat of oil. We saw the graves for them at Odin Castle, but I always assumed those were unmarked graves. Well, those were marked graves, but empty plots. Because obviously Kinemon wouldn't have a plot because they couldn't find his body, so it was there more for just, you know, symbolism. And so I guess Odin could have been buried there, and they just moved his body to here, maybe. But I don't know. I feel like Orochi would have wanted to keep the body of Odin for some reason, like, you know, like he like talks to his skull every night or something like that, you know. I don't know, but I guess they said Odin-sama will be put to rest here. It might also just be like his body is long gone, like they have no idea where it is, and this is just like symbolic, you know, put him to rest here. Man, there's a lot of death in this chapter. Why do you think I always wear a suit every time I do these reviews? It's so when a character dies, I'm already prepared for grieving. Yeah, that's the reason. Anyway, I mean, Ashura is whatever. We just met him during this arc. I mean, he was an okay character, but, you know, we didn't really spend that much time with Ashura, so he's dead. It's sad, but Izo, man, Izo is dead. I mean, poor Okiku, right? We just like, okay, Odin died, and then she just found her brother again, and then he dies, and it's like they only had one reunion and be like, you know, it's like, oh, Kiku, oh, Izo, I missed you, brother. I missed you, sister. And then he dies, you know? It's like, oh, dude, okay. Man, we gotta do a memorial service for Izo at some point. We gotta make this work. Okay. So let's see. Here's anything else with this moment here. You know, Kinemon just says, you know, I've lost so many people in my life. I don't think I could take much more, so I just hope that nobody else dies in the immediate future. Hey, Kawamatsu made it out of this whole situation okay in One Piece. Well, he's missing an eye, so I guess not in One Piece, but he made it out of this in relatively good condition, you know, compared to Izo, who is dead, so yeah. Also, if they are at Ryuma's grave, that's something else that doesn't get addressed in this chapter that I hope gets addressed in the next one, which is the last chapter of Wano, I guess. The whole Zoro and Ryuma thing. Like Zoro going to Ryuma's grave and paying respects to the Shusui or whatever. I would really like to see that in the next chapter if we can manage even only like one page of it. I mean, that needs to be addressed. So that's like the last thing of Wano that I think really needs to be included, okay? So, now we cut over to the palace, okay? And we're only like halfway through the chapter, guys. We got a lot of stuff left. So we go to the palace now. Yamato is on top of the palace, like on top of the roof, overlooking the flower capital. And she's kind of there just sitting down, and she's just like, I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry, I'm not hungry, but her stomach is like growling, so she clearly is very hungry. We'll find out more about this later. And then she hears an announcement that like, Yamato, Zoro, and Luffy are awake, and she's like, ah! And then she like jumps down, okay? Then we cut inside of the palace where Hiyori drop kicks Momonosuke as she did when she was a little kid. And so, you know, knocks Momo down, but he gets up and he mentions like, huh, that didn't even hurt. You know, why are you acting like such a tomboy, Hiyori? Like drop kicking people. That's not very ladylike. Didn't really hurt, but whatever. Momonosuke now has like the body of Odin, so he's ripped, he's tough, okay? And we find this out later in a rather humorous way. We now have a double page spread where we just see Luffy and Zoro waking up, and Luffy's just like, meat! Zoro's boom! booze! And it's like, all right, all the meat and booze, we prepared for this. Come on in, bring the truck. You know, it's like, we invented trucks in Wano just to bring you the meat and the booze. You know, they just drive a tractor trailer into the damn room. And say, okay, so they're all there. We got Nekamamushi, we got the Straw Hats, we got a bunch of the servants from the capital. They're bringing in all the food and the booze, and Zoro and Luffy are just chowing down and drinking and all that stuff. Momonosuke runs in and he's like, Zoro, Luffy, you know, don't eat all right now. I have prepared a giant banquet in your honor as soon as you would wake up, so you gotta go to that later. And I'm sure Luffy and Zoro, like, they've been unconscious, we find out actually for 7 days. 7 days, a whole week has passed since the battle has ended, okay? So they could honestly eat all, this is just pre-gaming for them, okay? They're gonna eat every single bit of food in this room and then go to the buffet, and they'll still probably devour that whole thing, right? So don't worry about that, Momonosuke, right? So he runs in and he's like, oh, we have a banquet planned for you and everything, blah, blah, blah. And then Luffy and Zoro just kind of like in the middle of eating, they just look over at Momo because they don't recognize him because they've been unconscious for a week. And they're just like, who are you? It's like, I'm Momonosuke. Yeah, I'm Momonosuke. You Shinobu's power. I'm an adult now, but whatever. I am the proper shogun of Wano, Kozuki Momonosuke, and everything like that, right? And they're like, oh, I guess you look pretty strong. You want to fight me? All right, let's go. And then, okay, I was waiting for this scene. Honestly, I was pretty damn sure this scene was going to happen as soon as we had the reveal that Momo was going to be, like, aged up by Shinobu. I'm like, I see what Oda's going to go with this, okay? We're going to have a scene where Momo's an adult, and he tries to do the thing with Nami of, like, Nami, they're being mean to me, and, like, jump into her chest, and then she's going to beat the shit out of him. Isn't that how that's going to go? And boom, right here. I knew it. I don't think it takes a lot of, like, clever, foreshadowing to see where Oda was going with that gag, but here we are. So Momonosuke is like, oh, they're being mean to me. They want to fight me. And then Nami is just like, get off me. Bam! And just clocks him right in the face, knocks him back. And, once again, he gets right back up and he's like, oh, that didn't hurt. But come on, Nami, I'm still only 8. And Nami's like, yeah, I guess that's true, but God, that is weird. And then off to the side, you just have Zoro there that's just like, yeah, he is pretty tough. Hot damn. And then we have Sanji and Brook that have their moment of revenge where Sanji and Brook cut the biggest grins they can have. Brook especially being a skeleton. Yoo-hoo-hoo-hoo! And they're just like, your special privilege is over, Momonosuke. Welcome to the world of adulthood. And then Momonosuke's like, what? I don't understand. And then Yamato goes over to Momo and takes a plate and just places it on his head. And apparently that is something she has been doing for like the last week nonstop. It's like, yeah, he might still have the mind of a kid, but he looks like Odin on the outside and just keeps placing plates on his head so it like resembles Odin's like hairstyle. And so Momo's like, stop putting plates on my head every chance you get. So Nami goes over to Yamato and asks her, hey, did you complete your vigil or your prayer? And everyone's like, what does that mean? And we find out a new custom of Wano that, an act of prayer, like when you want to wish for something really important, you'll basically like take something away from your own life until like it's completed, right? So in the case with Yamato, she gave up eating and bathing for an entire week so Luffy and Zoro could get better. Like that's just the custom of the nation, okay? And so now that they've woken up, Yamato begins to just like devour the buffet tray of like the rice balls and everything. Of just like, it's like, oh my God, I haven't eaten in a whole week. Like, oh my God. And so that's why she was up on the roof, like trying to like not focus on her hunger. And Luffy's just like, oh, well, that's why I feel great, okay? And Jinbei's in the background like, oh, what a nice person. And I think that's the same thing that Jinbei said in the last chapter. Like, oh, you seem like an okay person. Oh, you are an okay person, right? So it isn't confirmed in this chapter. It's not like a big moment where Luffy is like, join my crew, Yamato, or anything like that. Honestly, it sort of seems like it's already a foregone conclusion. I don't even know. I feel like we're still going to get a moment where it's actually said out loud that like, Yamato, join our crew, or Yamato, get on the Sunny, something like that. But already it seems like she's palling around with the Straw Hats like she is one of them, okay? So, yeah, that's the situation there. We also have Zoro who's like, wait a second, we were out of commission for like a week. I'm surprised we're not filthy. And so then Hiyori steps in and Hiyori's like, that's because I wiped you clean every single day. Tee. And then Sanji is just like, oh, why do you get all the luck? I wish I would have gotten knocked into a coma for a week, you know? And so, because Hiyori was like making very sure that they were bathed and like giving them a sponge bath for a solid week, huh, Hiyori? Solid week, huh? I wonder if it was like every part of... who am I kidding? It probably was. Yeah, it's like, oh, Zoro, I have to change your bandages and make sure, oh my god, your rippling muscles are washed properly, you know, so she probably had fun. Okay, so then though we have the flashback when Zoro remembers what Sanji said, you know, it was like Sanji was on the Den Den Mushi when he was fighting Queen, and Sanji was like to Zoro, like, hey, after this battle is over, if I'm no longer myself, Mosshead, I need you to personally end me. And Zoro's like, well, any day, any time, click, right? So Zoro remembers that, and he says, you know what? I think I clawed my way up back from hell just so I could make good on that promise. So let's do this. And Sanji's like, I don't need your help anymore. That's something else I thought was going to happen, where, like, Zoro wakes back up, and he's like, all right, wasn't I supposed to, oh, yeah. I was supposed to end you, right? I was like, hey, no, that was only if I act differently. You look a little different. I think I should, just for good measure, you know? It's just like, so, that's pretty funny. They're fighting in the background, like Zoro and Sanji are scuffling, so seems like Zoro is back up to full capacity there. I find, or not full capacity, but, you know, he's enough so that he can actually fight with Sanji. Now, I can't tell if Zoro is joking here, but it would be rather hilarious if the Grim Reaper, like the legitimate avatar of death, showed up in front of Zoro about to reap his immortal soul, and he's just like, Zoro! Your time has come! Brings down the scythe, and like right before it hits Zoro's neck, he's like, wait! I need to end the life of the cook. I can't go until that promise is fulfilled. And the Reaper's like, all right. And he just walks off stage. But yeah. So now though, because Zoro and Sanji are back up in action and Yamato has not bathed in a solid week and it's the end of an arc, I think we all know where this is going. Yeah, that's right. It's time for a bathhouse scene. Second one so far we've gotten in Wano, actually, as a matter of fact. Okay. So, Nami invites Yamato into the women's bath, but Yamato says, it's like, well, there's not like a mixed bath, like there's not like a one bath like the one in the town, so it's like separate baths for men and women, so I'm gonna go with the men, I'm gonna go bathe with them. And then Okiku is there, and Okiku says like, oh, can I join you girls? And so Nami's like, of course. And so the situation is we have the bath, the castle onsen, and we have in the men's bath, we have Zoro, Chopper, Yamato, Luffy, Nekomamushi, Brook, Jinbei, and Momonosuke. Sanji is there, and you can see from the reaction, obviously, he gets into the bath, and Yamato is stripped naked, so he immediately erupts blood and gets knocked away in the background, okay? Then we have the scene with the women's bath, where we have a lot of characters here. We have the Komachio. Komachio is the dog's name. Koma Inu is the species. I always mix that up. We have Shinobu lounging in the water. We have Nami. We have Otama. We have Otoko. We have Hiyori. We have Okiku. We have Speed in the background, and we have Carrot in the background. Okay, so really quick, just to bring this up. First of all, Okiku's arm, I was kind of looking to see if her arm actually did get reattached. It was cauterized by Kinemon, so I don't think. We don't, like, okay, so she only has the one arm in both scenes, like in the bath and when she's about ready to get into the bath. So I don't think it's reattached. It's just the scene with, when we see Kiku with her kimono on, it seems like the shoulder is like the same, but I was like, okay, I guess it could have been, I can't remember where it was cut off at, but I don't think Okiku's got her arm back is the point. Now, a couple of things just to address really quick here. With Okiku being in the women's bath, that makes perfect sense to me, and that was something that was very clear for a while now, where Okiku is transgender. It was pretty obvious to me anyway when Okiku is biologically male, but then announced to Luffy and everybody at the Udon prison, you know, I have the heart of a woman, you know, and that was like, okay, very clearly that's the case. And also in the Vivre card, Oda clarified that by saying that, like, yes, she identifies as a woman, okay? So I was like, okay, Okiku is transgender, makes sense. Now with Yamato, this is always a thing that's a lot of debate, so I'm not going to be on it for very long. But considering that Oda did not do the same thing with Yamato's Vivre card that he did with Okiku, Okiku, where he could have, where, Oda could have easily put in her Viver card that, like, Yamato identifies as a man. He did not do that, though. He's just like, identifies as a woman, okay? So it's like, okay, and then it was stated in the intro card that, Kaido's daughter, Yamato. It's like, okay. However, everybody in the castle referred to Yamato as, like, Kaido's son or young master in the male way of saying that in Japanese. I guess the best way to really describe it is that Yamato identifies as Kozuki Oden, is the best way. It's not at any rate, it's not the same situation as with Okiku, because Oda could have very clearly specified it if it was the same scenario there. Oda could always come around and change it at any time, I guess. It was like, oh, this Viver card should have said this instead. It was an oversight. That could have always happened. But considering that was like the official data book that included the information from Oda himself, I'm going to go along with that. And so use the female pronouns for Yamato and also female pronouns for Okiku because she identifies as a woman. So yeah, that's the situation. I still get comments about that every once in a while, so just wanted to clear that up. Okay. As for the bath itself, nothing really crazy like is said or anything like that. It's just, we have Hiyori and Okiku talking to each other, so that's kind of a cute moment there. But nothing else really important. It's just a bath scene at the end of an arc in One Piece, so, see Alabasta, basically. So now we're actually cutting over to the Tokage Port in Udon, which is the port where the rebellion originally was supposed to leave the mainland Wano from. That's where, like, Kinemon and everybody arrived at the port, but it was abandoned and there was no one there. That's the same port. So we see the Thousand Sunny, we see the Victoria Punk, which is the Kid Pirates flagship, and we see the Polar Tang, which is Law's submarine, and they're basically all at the dock, and everybody is working around the clock to fix them back up in ship shape, and they've succeeded at that. So Frankie is there, the head carpenter dude, I think his name was Minatomo, he's there too, he's fixing everything up, all of the shipwrights of every crew is there, and they're like fixing everything. We see a lot more members of Kid's crew. Kid's crew was recently revealed in an SBS, like all the members, so we see a member next to Killer here named Bubblegum. That's my favorite guy, Bubblegum. And also a dude named Gig, who's like this big fat guy that has like a leather jacket. It's like, I'm Gig, so that's pretty cool. And anyway, they're all sitting there and like, okay, we fixed all the ships up, we're good. Even the Frankie Shogun is fixed back up again. Still Battle Frankie 38. So Frankie did not build Battle Frankie 39, the Frankie Shogun, or like Mach 2 or something like that. He just fixed up, I guess the original wasn't completely destroyed to the point where he had to start over. Like he, salvaged the scrap remaining of the Frankie Shogun and fixed it up. So that's the thing, like, don't worry too much about the Frankie Shogun being destroyed. Like, even if it was completely obliterated, Frankie can always rebuild, or he can just make a Mach 2, you know what I mean? So don't freak out too much about that. Let's see, we have Beppo and Killer and Bubblegum there, and they're all like, man, the Frankie Shogun is so cool. Captain, can we have one of those? He goes up to Law. Law, can we buy a Megazord? Can the Polar Tang transform into a robot? I want one of those now. It's like, that would be pretty cool. Law might actually go for that, actually. Let's see, but we have Kid there, and Kid's like, hey, don't be getting all buddy-buddy with them, all right? Because we're going to be going out to sea soon. We're ending this alliance, all right? So just, get on the ship. We're moving out or whatever. And also, he brings up like, hey, look, even though we're in a closed-off nation right now, the information that 2 Yonkos have been defeated, yeah, that is definitely 100% going to leak. I don't need Hawkins' dumbass tarot cards to know that, all right? 2 Yonko are defeated. The world's gonna find out. Our bounties are gonna shoot through the roof. So you better get ready, okay? This is gonna be a whole new world. Who do you think the world's gonna pin that target to our backs now? Now the Yonko are gone. It's gonna be us, okay? And Law even confirms this. He's just like, yeah, they're gonna find out, like, no matter what. Beppo's there, and he's like, oh, yeah, but Captain, your bounties might shoot up through, like, the roof. It might be, like, the highest bounties in the world now. It's gonna be insane, right? And then in the background, almost on cue, we hear the and then boom, here's Scratchman, Apu, and Imbi, the number 1 of the numbers, the one that didn't actually get killed. I'm guessing number 2 got killed by, no, number 2 and number 6, I guess they fought to the death, I don't know. Maybe number 2 is still alive, but number 1 is Imbi, who I guess is just a member of the on-air pirates now, because he seems to be getting along with Apu pretty well. They were kind of arguing earlier when they were escaping the castle, but I guess they've made up, so now they're like friends again or whatever. So Imbi's there, and Apu is right there in his hand, and Apu's got the World Economic Times. He's got the World Economic Journal, and he's just like, up. Yeah, you guys are right. Those bounties you're talking about, the bounties of you, the bounties that exist, the bounties that have the numbers of you that are wanted by the government, those bounties, yeah, they're in this newspaper. He just throws that on the ground, lands right in front of Kid, and Kid just kind of looks down at it like, okay, you know Kid, he cuts a very serious face, but you know Kid on the inside is like, please let me be the new Yonko, please let me be the new Yonko, please let me be the new Yonko. Like, he's gonna open up the page in Kid's mind, and it's just gonna be like full page spread, like double page spread, triple page spread on the World Economic Journal. Eustace, Captain Kid, new Yonko. And Kid's gonna be like, well, yeah, damn straight, knew that. Yes. And he's like, walks away. No, but he doesn't open the paper because we don't know what the new bounties are yet. That'll be next chapter. Okay, I'm telling you what, Luffy, 5.6 billion, we're locking him in now, okay? Lock in your bounties now, ladies and gentlemen, all right? Luffy, 5.6 billion. Sanji, somewhere over 3 billion. Zoro, somewhere over 3 billion. Yamato's gonna be over 4 billion, by the way. Let's see. Nami, let's get Nami up to 200 million. Why not? Let's get Chopper up to at least 1,000. Can we get Chopper up to at least 1,000? Usopp, he didn't really do much during this arc, but he is God, so I'm thinking at least 2 billion. Robin, okay. There is no excuse anymore, all right? Luffy's number 1. Robin should be number 2 in terms of bounty. There you go. Maybe Yamato is like an outside factor because I guess the government doesn't know Yamato joined the Straw Hats yet. But it should be higher than it ever was before now, okay? Can we all agree on this? Sure. Jinbei's, he was like 438 before. Jinbei's easily has to be over 3 billion. If Sanji and Zoro's are over 3 billion, Jinbei's is over 3 billion. You know, whatever. Brooks, let's get Brooke up to 500 million. And Frankie, where's Frankie? Frankie's down here. Frankie's 94 million. You can't really see these ones down here, but Frankie's down here. Frankie has to be over 100 million easily. Let's have Frankie just be an even billion. Cyborg Frankie, 1 billion bounty. Let's do that. Absolutely. Okay. I think I got all of them. Did I? I don't know. Maybe. If I forgot anybody, I'm sorry. But anyway, I think I got them all. Okay, so yeah, I'm overestimating this time. You might be thinking, I'm like, that's too high for a lot of those characters. You know what? Nami, 400 million. Why not? Okay. This is like the final arc, okay? This is very likely to be the last major bounty increase they're going to get. Maybe at the very end of the story, they'll get another bounty, but like the story will be over at that point, you know what I mean? So it'll be like they find the One Piece, they get one more bounty, but like the story's like over at that point. So this might be the last time that we have bounties that actually are relevant to the story, you know what I mean? So see where that goes. Apu throws the newspaper down. He's like, your updated bounties and the names of those who have been dubbed the new Emperors of the Sea. So there's 2 openings now. There's an opening for Big Mom and an opening for Kaido. It would be funny if Luffy was definitely one. Well, okay, because Luffy was already dubbed the 5th Emperor before this. So I'm assuming Luffy's going to get one of those spots. Luffy's going to get Kaido's spot, definitely. And then Big Mom's spot... Wouldn't it be weird if Law and Kid had to share a spot? You know, just like, the new Emperors of the Sea, Luffy taking Kaido's spot, and Kid and Law taking Big Mom's spot. And Kid's like, oh, come on, now they're gonna be, what? That would be funny. That would be hilarious. Then Kid and Law have to like, I guess we have to join up now and be like, merge our crews. I'm like, screw that! No! It's like, but the paper says, like, I don't care what the paper says. I'm filing a complaint with the government. You know, it's like, that would be funny. But anyway, so that's that. That is something that's huge, but it'll be something for next chapter, and I'll make some videos about it this week. And now we have the last scene of the chapter, where we cut outside of Wano. So we have all those pillars that are rising up outside of the nation, like when the Straw Hats saw them arriving at Wano before they got to the waterfall. So the skies all go gloomy, and then there's like giant, you know, pillars in the middle of the ocean. So we see a shadowy individual, a silhouetted individual, just sailing, flying, really, hovering, honestly. I'll tell you what he's doing. He's helicoptering. That's what he's doing. Because there's a helicopter-like propeller on his back, and he's just like this, just like... He's just doing that. All right? So this person we don't know is flying in the skies somehow and receives a radio transmission and just like, shh, where are you? Give me your location. Shh. And then the guy in the sky is like, I told you, I'm in the skies, Sakazuki-san. It's like, shh, that's not specific. I was like, where are you exactly? Shh. It's like, I'm fine, I'm in the skies over Wano. Oh, I can actually see the mainland. I'm almost there. So the person on the other end of the radio is Akainu communicating with this individual. And we have the last scene of the chapter with the radio transmission with Akainu saying, shh, you are not to do anything unnecessary. Shh, do you understand, Green Bull? Ryukyugyu. And then Ryukyugyu, Green Bull, we just see the back of him. We don't see what he looks like. We see his marine coat. We see his hair, which we already kind of knew. And then we have a giant dandelion thing, flower, sprouting out of his back that is acting as a helicopter propeller. And he's arriving near the island. And he's just like, I know already. God, you don't need to say it a million times. To be continued. End of chapter. I don't even know. Okay, so next week, holy shit. Next week, we are going to be getting the bounties for the, oh my god, the updated bounties for all of the Straw Hats, for Kid, for Law, probably other relevant characters, like Apu, I mean, if that matters, whatever. We're going to find out about the world's reaction to the fall of the Emperors, because it's in a newspaper. It's not just the wanted posters, it's also the news. So we're going to learn about the government's response to this and what they're going to do, what the Marines are going to do about this. We might learn about the warlords in the process. And then also on top of that, we got freaking Green Bull arriving at Wano, who was most likely the dude at the beginning of the chapter that was relaying the information to the government, who was hijacking the signal somehow. They're just like, shh, don't move, I'll be right there. That's probably Green Bull. So Green Bull's gonna arrive, and this dude, we don't know what he looks like. I'm assuming, we've already kind of assumed his ability, it's something to do with nature, plants or something like the plant fruit or the nature fruit, or more general, the Hashirama fruit, whatever you want to call it. But he has the ability to sprout a flower out of his back to act as like a helicopter propeller. So I'm assuming he can just summon plants. I'm assuming he can just like wave his hand and just create an entire forest, which, I'll be honest with you, if he arrives at Wano, he might be like, man, this whole area is just a giant wasteland. Restarts like the ultimate in reforestation. That actually might happen. That'll actually be really cool if he does that, because he's still a Marine. He wants to help out the people of the world. He lands in Wano, he sees all these people like, they have water now, but they're like living in the middle of a wasteland. He's like, this isn't cool. Grow my trees! Like, all right. You guys are good. And we've already seen the admirals like wanting to flex their abilities. Like the first time we met Aokiji, he's like froze an entire ocean just because he could. Also to help out Tonjik get across Longring Longland. But anyway, yeah, we've seen the admirals flex their skills and their powers pretty often. So if he just wants to show up at Wano and restart a forest, I could see that happening, okay? Also, that might explain why he can fast, because he could just get nutrients through sunlight, and that's why he doesn't, like, die if he doesn't eat for, like, a month or 2 months or whatever, right? Or, like, I think it said he hasn't had a bite to eat in, like, years, right? It's been a while since he's eaten, so photosynthesis, right? So he's going to show up. He's probably going to be the one that's going to try to capture Robin. So kind of going along with the same thing with Aokiji, it's very, very similar to Aokiji's first appearance in the manga. Do you remember how Aokiji first showed up? We just see the Gorosei speaking to each other, and then we cut over to see a scene of a silhouetted figure riding across the ocean on a bicycle, and that was Aokiji. And now we had a conversation with the Gorosei, and now we cut over to see a silhouetted figure sailing across the sky with a giant flower propeller. Very similar to Aokiji. And the whole thing there was like confirm that Robin was part of the Straw Hats, and now Green Bull's job might be capture Nico Robin. Now, would he succeed at this? If he has the straight up ability to just completely control plants, like he could just be like, all right, we gotta capture Robin, all right, giant vine just appears in the palace capital, like they're all having this big epic feast, and they're all eating, and then all of a sudden a vine just breaks up through the floor, grabs Robin, and just, what the hell just happened? And then, hi Robin, my name is Green Bull. Welcome to the Marines. Set sail. makes a giant wall of thorns and like a giant like briar or whatever, so people can't get immediately to them, and just cover the entire ocean with plant life and like the Sargassum Sea or whatever, so the the rudders and the ships and the submarines get stuck and they can't capture them because it's like the Sargassum Sea. Look it up, it's by the Caribbean. It's like in that general area, and just like, oh my god, we can't get Robin. And she's like, Robin is not scared though, because she's been down this road before, and she's just like, my crew's gonna come rescue me, and you're all going to die in the process. So yeah, I'll sit down. Give me a cup of tea. I've been down this situation before. You're all gonna die, And Green Bull's like, well, yeah, that might be so, but hey, it's my job, right? Okay. So that might actually happen. Don't disregard it. And that might be a good way to cliffhanger to end chapter 1053, So, yeah, that's how that goes. That's the end of the chapter. This has already been a long-ass review, so I think I'm going to end it here, and we'll follow up in other videos. But, like, so much crap happened here, but at the end of the day, bounties and Green Bull. Green Bull and bounties. That's what's most important. There's other stuff, too. Is Hawkins dead, for example? But those are the main focuses of this chapter. Thanks for watching, everybody. This is going to be a long one. Tekking101 signing out. Later. Bounties! Green Bull!